but to be able to see things as they really are. That's what Nibbana is. Just being with the way things really are. Very simple, but usually requires some practice. And part of that practice is learning to let go in a wise way.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami.
So, as with previous talks, there's a little bit of a carryover from last week. Sometimes when I talk about a certain theme, it triggers off more reflections around a similar theme. So I mentioned last time about something like the action of no action, just to really emphasize the point of that, especially in our Western world, we tend to think action is very overt. You see overt activity, always doing something. We're a very active society, but in spiritual practice, there's a whole different side of things that we have to take into account. Like certain practices, like sometimes something like patience is more valuable than just overt action. We take up meditation practice, and most of us, of course, we're doing something, so we want to get some results. So we are striving, we're hoping, we're looking for results. But really, the most helpful virtue in this case is patience. We need a certain amount of trust in the principle of causality, of course. You create the right conditions, the results will arise. So we do the exercises, and we have the trust that eventually there'll be some result. But we can't say when. Depends on a lot of factors. A lot of different conditions need to come together. Not just how many hours we sit on the cushion, not how much effort we put into it, but other factors too need to come into account. So some of the factors of spiritual qualities like patience and just being able to receive, allow. I did mention about letting go. Letting go, to at least in a relative sense, also applies. We're always thinking about getting rather than giving up or letting go. Getting spiritual practice, getting results, getting enlightenment, but the kind of irony is you can't get enlightenment because it's not a thing. What we can do is put effort into the right conditions, and maybe it'll manifest. Again, no guarantees. I can't say when. But really, letting go at its sort of more ultimate level is outside of action and non-action. I mean, your non-action is action, isn't it? But real letting go is beyond all that. It's sort of a result of seeing clearly. It's a result of understanding, result of the practice. One surrenders, realizes that one's usual aggressive approach isn't the way. And when it comes to action, as I mentioned, the Buddha defines kamma, or action, as intentional action, willed action. And will is a fundamental aspect of self. So, much of we're using will, we're also encouraging or feeding, nurturing self in that process. And the result, the purpose of letting go is letting go of any grasping of self. So basically, using willful action is not going to see through it. And of course, the usual, with the intention, there's follow through, and the action there's a willful action. There is what we call willpower. And many people are, driven their whole life by just willpower. They will things to happen. They will themselves to do this or do that in a variety of ways. I mean, some are obvious. I want to do that. So I want to get this book. So then you do it. Other times it's more unconscious or in the background. I'm reading that book in order to get more information, more knowledge, so I can get wiser, so I can get enlightened, and it goes on. But with something like letting go, well, we can't do it. We can't do it with will. But again, the principle of causality, we know we can at least create the right conditions. So it's sort of like I should call it the art of letting go. One has to look at the right conditions, or provide or cultivate the right conditions. And some of these conditions are, you have to know the right time and the right situation. Sometimes the situation is taking up things, like engaging with the meditation object, just in the exercise of meditation. Sometimes you have to make an effort, you have to engage with the meditation object. Other times you just have to receive the situation. You're trying to focus on the breathing, and the mind is just so turbulent or so stressed or so tense or something, it's just not working. You just have to accept, receive the situation. Oh, okay, this, going at it with overt action is not going to be successful. Create more tension, more turmoil in the mind. So you have to back off a bit. A form of letting go, as it were. But another approach is that, besides just willpower, there's another kind of power, if you like. I call it just life power. Well, willpower is that kind of grasping at something and pushing ahead and forcing things. Life power is more in tune with the situation. For example, when we take up the meditation exercise, first of all, just try to observe the condition of body and mind. First of all, to receive it. And then then it helps you to tune in your effort or your energy to it, rather than just sit down and say, I'm going to watch the breath today and get my mind calm with just, brute, forceful willpower. Yeah. Maybe it works sometimes, but it's very heavy-handed, and it'll eventually get a headache, and it'll be very, very stressful and, in a way, counterproductive, because one is not receiving things as they are. One is trying to push against them. The ego the self is pushing against them, trying to force the mind to be calm. Whereas if you just receive, aware, notice, receive the situation, mind is busy like that, so maybe it's helpful to see what the content of the busyness is. Maybe it's some worry about something, so you recognize, worry. What's the point of that? Okay, put that aside. Maybe it's worry about tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's a long way off. Things can change. Put that aside. You can clear a bit of space in the mind first, just by contemplation or observing the situation of the mind and the body. The body is tensed up. Not a very good start. Already already makes you somewhat exhausted. So relax the posture. And maybe the body is not, so held up straight. Maybe it's not so, but it's not so tensed up either. And you find the right posture, just enough to hold the body upright, stay awake. And you notice that you can sustain this much longer if you're in tune with life power. You can sustain the energy of the body, natural energy of the body. You can also tune into the condition of mind and work with it rather than force against it. So we just try and be aware of life power, and unfortunately, it's not so. Doesn't stand out like willpower. Willpower, you can kind of grab it, and you can kind of recognize it, and you can kind of use it. Yeah. But life power is just in the background. It's always present. I notice this with just waking up in the morning, for example. And when I wake up in the morning, there is the willpower part of me says, get up, start meditating, don't waste any time. But another part of me says, wait a minute, hold it here. If I follow that and I do get up, sometimes it's too out of tune with the mind and body. The mind gets confused, it gets a bit irritated, it gets a bit annoyed. And the body gets tense, even sometimes feeling a little bit sick, because sometimes the willpower is strong enough and gives us a charge of adrenaline to get us going, but it's not very pleasant. It's like a little shot of poison into your body. But if I just wait, try and be aware of the condition of mind, condition of body, slowly waking up into a more natural state. Then when I get up, if I don't fall asleep again, if I do get up, the body's more in tune and the mind's more in tune with meditation. It's more harmony with it and more ready for meditation then too. But if you can just look beyond willpower, study this, you can begin to notice when you're functioning on willpower, when you're functioning on life power. Life power is a bit more subtle, but it's much more in tune with the body, and you can sustain it longer. It's in tune with life then. So this is a support for learning to sort of short circuit the self, short circuit this willful assertion of self. You short circuit it by not feeding it anymore. Recognizing there is life power and not willpower only, which feeds the ego, feeds the self. And the other side of course, will, the other side of it is habit. When there is some sustained or repeated willful activity, it becomes a habit. There's a saying, sow a thought, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a personality. Sow a personality, reap a destiny. So some of the, our normal way of functioning, much of it is just a habit. And because the habit is fed by will, which is a part of self, then the habits are self-fulfilling also. So the Buddha, he did give some sort of general guidelines for stepping outside some of the habits. I mean, just like living the renunciant life. It was outside the usual habit of the society of India. The mendicant, the renunciant, stepped outside the usual career, family life situation of society. Other ways we have to find out for ourselves, because each one of us has our own habits. Some of them are just like, just trying to do things differently. Yeah, many of these habits they're so ingrained in us, we don't even notice them. We just go around like robots. Yeah. But especially developing some of the spiritual exercises, that's what helps us break out of these old habits. Developing a bit more concentration, a bit more collectedness, calming down the usual habitual busy mind, for example. If your busy mind calms down, first of all, you can notice your busy mind more easily. You can notice some of these habit tendencies, these familiar ways of thinking. You can notice them more easily because they're going more slowly. Your thoughts are going more slowly, so you can observe them more carefully. And then developing more mindfulness or awareness, regards to the body. And you bring awareness to the body, and you notice how some of these habit tendencies, the usual habitual tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your jaw, for example. You can notice these tendencies. And what's that about? Why is that there? There is some kind of a tension in the shoulders, for example, might be a habitual defensiveness. There's again self-defense, defending yourself against what? I mean, who knows? It might have been have a trauma behind it. Defending yourself against an attack, which never happened again, but the body still remembers that. So, so that kind of that pattern of self is still maintained. And then it can be very hard to engage it or disengage it, by just becoming aware of it with mindfulness. I don't need to feed it again. I don't need to keep reinforcing that again and again. These like developing the factors of awakening, for example. I mean, these factors, all these spiritual factors the Buddha encourages, when they're developed, they are, in a sense, they can free themselves from self. First of all, we start off with I'm focusing attention, or I'm being mindful, I'm being aware. But there's still self in that, isn't there? But once it gets developed, it can become a factor in itself. It can become so empowered that it steps outside the self. Initially, people can only be aware of what the self allows them to be aware of. But if awareness gains more power, it begins to observe the self, outside the control of self. You begin to see things about yourself that you wouldn't normally want to see, but it's usually very important to see. Like these, tensions in the body and whatnot. It's very helpful to see them because you're draining off a lot of energy with those tensions in the body, draining off a lot of unnecessary energy. I don't want to see them, but when you do, perhaps you can release it. Same with states of mind. I mean, it's just trying to observe some of these states of mind. There's familiar patterns going through your thinking, about old hurts that you've had, or mistakes you made in your life, or something or other. It's in the past, but still they play through your mind, and then they bring up emotions and regrets and all these things. It's all over. Sorry, wasting your time. It makes a good, what do they call them? Soap opera, maybe. but it's all in the past. They'd probably write a soap opera about all the mistakes I made in my life. It'd be a Hollywood hit, probably. Of course, I couldn't sign it though. Be too embarrassing. But all these, like the 5 spiritual powers and the factors of awakening, once they're cultivated and given enough development or energy to them, they become, can become selfless factors in themselves. And then they also help to short circuit all the self-interest, the self-involvement. And it facilitates letting go. When you begin to see different states of mind, for example, you begin to observe especially the states of mind that arise from collectedness or samadhi. You notice that this busyness of mind, this wandering mind, these certain kinds of habits of mind, they're only conditions. They're not your true self. They're not the way your mind is all the time. They aren't the true nature of mind. The Buddha said in one of the scriptures that the mind was intrinsically luminous. When the mind calms down, when there is some samadhi, one of the nimittas that some people have is a bright light. It's a natural condition of mind. But how many people recognize that? They usually take their busy mind, their wandering mind, their confused mind as the true nature of the mind. They haven't seen it any other way. I remember my first experience in Sri Lanka of meditation, and my mind was very, very confused, and I just assumed that's the way it always is. But then reading books about Buddhism, they talk about peace of mind, and it sounds great, but it wasn't my experience. But I was very fortunate on this first retreat I had in Sri Lanka, a very intensive retreat. After several weeks, eventually the mind calmed down, and I got a bit of a shock. Oh, all these thoughts, and of course most of the thoughts about yourself, all these thoughts about myself, they aren't permanent. They aren't the real nature of the mind. Yeah, they're just conditioned phenomena. And the real nature of the mind just stopped. It was so peaceful, so clear. But it was so different than what I was used to. It was shocking too. It was, what? Suddenly all my thinking about myself stopped, and who am I then? If all my self-supporting thoughts stop, who am I if I'm not thinking about myself? So on one hand, it was very, very insightful or something, very, very important insight. But on the other hand, it was a little bit frightening because it opened up a whole new world of inquiry. Yeah. If I am not my thoughts about myself, who am I? What am I? Without thinking. And I'd based my whole life up to that time, on thinking. I was an intelligent student. I had to use my brain to get a degree and get a job and make my way in life. And then I realized, actually, that's not my real nature. It's not my true nature. That clever thinker wasn't me. Oops, who am I then? Yeah. Got to find a new personality. Well, there have no personality, actually. Grasp no personality. Don't be anything, as Ajahn says. Don't even be enlightened. If you're grasping being enlightened, it's also a heavy task. Keep that one up for everybody. But once these, on one hand, the Buddha reminds us that developing these qualities should be based on letting go. They mention these factors of awakening, for example, of the powers, the Eightfold Path. And then it says these should be practiced with seclusion, dispassion, cessation, culminating in letting go. And that's the encouragement. That's the right attitude to it. Yeah. And one finds that maybe in the beginning you hear that and it doesn't make sense, maybe even. How can you develop focused meditation and let it go? You got to keep up with it. You got to keep that focus going. But the trouble is, if you keep holding on to that, trying to focus, the trying gets in the way of the focus. Say that the real purpose of focused attention, ultimately the goal, is that you focus on one object. There is a subject focusing on the object, breathing, and the more that you focus, the subject and the object come closer and closer and closer together. There's less distance from them, between the two of them. And collectedness culminates in when the subject and the object come together. Unitary consciousness. But if you're still trying to focus on the object, the trying gets in the middle of it. So you can't reach unified consciousness by trying. Ultimately, you just have to let go. And if you haven't cultivated that energy, that direction of focusing, then the focusing continues, but the trying stops. So the object and the subject come together, unify, but it requires letting go of the trying in order to achieve it. Very subtle point, but important too. Let's say it's to be based on letting go, but in the beginning, the first stage is engaging, being active first. But at a certain point, you realize you have to let go to realize the full unification. But you'll know when the time comes. If you have that in your mind, yes, really, I'm trying to focus, and then let go, and the focus happens. And the same with mindfulness, awareness. People are trying to be mindful. The trying gets in the way of really being present with what's happening. You can't observe what's really happening with the trying in the way. All you see is that trying, or all you can, the trying gets more subtle, of course. It starts off maybe at the very beginning it's a bit coarse. It's more and more subtle, but then awareness has to drop the trying, and it manifests. And awareness is a unique or is an original characteristic of mind. Focused attention, collectedness, clear awareness is a natural state of mind. When you drop the self-interest and let go the self-interest, the self-striving, the self-attaining. In the beginning, you maybe need it for a while, maybe for a lot, but eventually you have to let it go. So that collectedness happens, mindfulness happens without a person being mindful, without a focuser, just the focusing then. So that's the way to step outside, the self-interest in a practical way. Or at least the Buddha realized that these spiritual exercises need to be developed, of course. So a lot of the, at least initially, a lot of the encouragement is upon the practice, doing it. The doing. Once it gets, you get some familiarity with it, some experience, then you begin to see the subtlety of it, and begin to step beyond it, beyond the formalities of it. And of course, another way, the ultimate way, I guess, is through wisdom. And we have the, meditation exercises, but the exercises too, developing collectedness and clear seeing. The purpose is wisdom. Ultimately seeing the way things really are. And we bring that back to our own experience. The kind of guideline for it is the first discourse in the middle-length sayings, the root of all things, the Buddha points us back to the perceptual process. That's where, the sense of self manifests in the perceptual process. When there is a seeing, there's usually what's sometimes translated as conceiving. You see something, there's a seeing happening, so for example, and then, I am seeing. A thought of self, a self-reference pops in automatically. It's an old habit we've learned early in our psychological development. Yeah, I see that, and then I can control that. In fact, there's just a seeing process there. That thought that comes in, I am seeing, is extra. It's not part of the factual experience. There is the physical eye, there is the brain, and so seeing happens, and vision happens, and then a little something in your brain, an old habit, an old memory comes up and says, I am seeing, clock or something. And, half the time it's not right, but we have to just ignore that anyway. At least the clock is on today, I can see it. But when it was first here, I just thought it was a nice piece of wood. No numbers on it, but there's now. But the Buddha pointed out this particular process. I mean, the Buddha had the, clear vision, he had the insight, better than most of us can. Yeah. Or probably more than all of us can. Yeah. So he pointed it out. This is going on. But most of us wouldn't even see it. Just an ordinary habit of mind. Yeah. The Buddha said there is a perception, then there is a conceiving, and then there is the identification with it. I am seeing, and then I am that, and I like that, and I want that. And then all the karmic activities then click into it. I want that, I can't get it, so I get frustrated. I want it, I get it, and then I satisfy my greed temporarily. And those are the things that happen in the, ordinary world, I guess you'd say, the worldly attitudes. But if you kind of observe the perceptual process, one can notice, one sees clearly. There's just seeing. Stop. Yeah. So in the first discourse of the middle-length sayings, the Buddha points out the perceptual process of four different beings. The unenlightened, basically the unenlightened and the enlightened. And the enlightened one, they see, but they don't bring in the self-reference. They just recognize, there's just a sight there. And that's the far as the perceptual process goes, just seeing, that's it. No conceiving of it as I am seeing, and I like it, I want it, how can I get it? So you can maybe at least imagine, if you just stay with the perceiving, the perceiving of it, without the conceiving of it, without the conceiving, the self-referencing of it, just how peaceful the mind can be. You're seeing, no big deal. Hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thought going on, no reaction to it. No for, no against, no liking, disliking, just the way it is. That's actually what's going on. Yeah. But of course, the sense of self comes into it for most people and makes a big story out of it. A big story, a big drama out of it. And, I guess it fills your mind up with something to do, I guess, but also creates more complications in life. But one needs to be able to see this directly because, those old habits are very strong. I mean, they're sort of like, very deeply ingrained upon us. So many times they just happen automatically, sneak up on you without you even noticing it. But if we have more awareness and more clear seeing and more calmness of mind, and we already have been primed in a way by the Buddha's teaching to watch out for this, then occasionally, anyway, we can not let conceiving happen, not let self-referencing happen. Maybe the first few times you notice, you can notice the self coming up. Oh, I'm seeing. Then wait a minute. I don't need that sense of self in it. It complicates the whole picture. So you can not fall into that trap with the I am seeing, and then it's I'm seeing that, and I want that, and I like that, and I blah, blah, blah. Last time I saw that, you just cut it off. Oh, the sense of self is just an illusion. That thought, that idea, I am seeing, is an illusion, not correct. And you can begin to slowly let it go, let it go, let it go, and disengage from it. Letting go has various manifestations of disengaging, allowing, receiving, letting it go. I think last time I mentioned about people try and let go, they usually end up pushing away. Just bring up that thought, letting go of things. I mean, what comes up in your mind? I won't. I have to let go of my friends and my family. I have to let go of my favorite clothes or something or other. But it's not about pushing away. It's letting go of the grasping, the holding, the clinging to these things. When there is that sense of possession, there is I am seeing that, I want that, and there is grasping in that too usually. How can I hold that? How can I keep that? Or how can I pick it up and push it away? Whereas when you recognize that, there's only the seeing there, then there's not all these complications come into it. I was just reflecting a little while ago about, some of my old friends I had, If you think about, I have to give up my friends. But, I recognize that, many of these friends, I never had to give them up. It's more like I just kind of outgrew them. We were friends together when certain situations, certain conditions came together, certain times and certain interests, common interests, and then gradually just drifted away. So I didn't have to actually, let them go. Didn't have to push them away. It just, they just kind of faded away. If I was, trying to hold on to them, then it was, be much more complicated. One time I was after I'd traveled for a couple of years, and then I met some old school friends, and we got together to, have some, meet together and have a few beers together, and I was talking to them, and I realized that we had nothing in common anymore. Yeah. Well, while I was out traveling, they were, had their jobs and whatever they were doing. So they were talking about their friends and talking about the music they listened to and the football games or hockey games or something or other. And I had no idea what they're talking about because I had been away traveling. If I tried to talk about visiting the Taj Mahal in India or something, they'd also be confused, wouldn't know what to talk about. None of them have been to the Taj Mahal in India. Nothing to talk about in common anymore. So I realized we just, we still knew each other, and we still had some common ground for memories, really. But Now there's no more common interest. And never saw them again. We just drifted away, drifted apart. So when you think, oh, I'm going to have to give up my friends, I mean, it's really giving up the grasping of them, the holding on to them. And usually that is a prop for some part of ourself. Yeah. They remind me of some good times I had at high school or something. But it's all over. It's finished. So just a matter of looking at letting go of the grasping, the clinging, the holding on to, rather than trying to push anything away. Yeah. So everything is still there. At least the memories are still there. Those people are still there, probably. I mean, maybe some have passed away by now. They're as old as me. They're relics already. I didn't need to push them away. I just let go of that. This holding on to these old memories we shared together. That was all. So when letting go happens, I mean, it's a great lightening of the heart. You can still be with things, but be much more fluid with them. Yeah. And when you begin to observe, what you're trying to hold on to, you recognize that a lot of it isn't. We can't really hold on to it. Can't hold on to our memories. Our memories are, you try to remember, for example, some of the names of my friends, and I can't remember the names of them even. Yeah. It's like, well, we spent years together. I can't remember their names even. I'm letting go of my memories too. Maybe prematurely. They're letting me go, maybe, or something. But these things that we think we need, they're actually kind of usually props in some way for our sense of self. But you recognize that since the self is actually a bit of an illusion anyway, what's it propping up? Much more to abide with the way things really are. There is sights, sure, there's sights there, but try to hold on to them as a certain way, in a certain form, it's not going to work. You see some particular object, you like it for a while, and after a while you just grow out of it. It's like you grew out of your old toys when you were a child. Yeah. You realize, oh, it was fine for a while, but past now. And then you're more fluid with that, rather than building up more baggage to take, hold, to clean, look after. Let it go. You find your life is much more spacious, much more peaceful. You say, just being able to recognize it's just sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought. Yeah. There's nothing else in between it. There's no solid objects there. Yeah. There's not lasting friendships. Yeah. There's memories. There's particular sensations, but those are only sense impressions. They come and they go. And as it said in the chanting, the funeral, what we call the funeral chanting, all conditioned things are impermanent. Yeah. It is their nature to arise and pass. But in their passing, there's peace. Yeah. Most of us think, oh, passing, oh no, it's going to be painful. It's only painful if you're grasping it. And it's only painful, the passing of the object is just natural. What's painful is your grasping of it. That's where it's going to hurt. And the grasping is something we do, you can say compulsively. We do with ignorance and craving. So letting go of the craving, of the grasping, that'll be the result. That'll result in everlasting peace if you can do that. So letting go has it's a real art. Letting go, If it's done too early, we don't have the right conditions, that allows it to function properly. And maybe too early on, and we end up pushing away rather than just letting go, letting things be the way they really are. I prefer that to, talking about enlightenment. Yeah. The Buddha didn't mention about enlightenment very often, but he did say the way, being able to see the way things really are. It's all the practice of trying to facilitate, not some new experience of enlightenment, but to be able to see things as they really are. That's what nibbana is. Just being with the way things really are. Very simple, but usually requires some practice. And part of that practice is learning to let go in a wise way. So hopefully we become a little bit more clear what the nature of letting go is, and perhaps we'll be able to, say, perfect the art of letting go. So become part of our everyday experience of life and experience of much greater peace of mind then. So I leave that for your reflection this evening.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.